Welcome to the SCHEELS Outdoors Podcast, your source for information on hunting, fishing, and all of your outdoor passions.
Hello, everyone. Mike Anderson here, and I want to welcome you all to the SCHEELS Outdoors Podcast. To kick things off, I want to talk about a series that we've just recently started that we are super excited about, and that is the Virtual Hunt Series. If you're wondering what a Virtual Hunt Series is, it's a live segment where we feature athletes in the industry talking about waterfowl, big game, food processing, all sorts of great things. So on Tuesday, September 29th, we had the opportunity to sit down with Christy Lee Cook and Kirsty Pike as we talked about women in the industry and big game and hunting strategies. This was a live segment, so we had the opportunity to answer questions from the viewers who heard it live, and we also gave away some great prize packages. If you weren't able to catch that segment, don't worry, we'll have it recorded right here on podcasts so you can find it and listen to it later. It is finally that magic time of year where temperatures are dropping, leaves are falling. We spent all summer honing our skills, shooting our bows, blowing those duck calls, and seasons are finally ramping up. We've seen a ton of people out there punching tags, which is super awesome. And I want to take this time to remind people that we do a segment on SCHEELS Outdoors called Trophy Tuesday, where we celebrate all of your success out there. If you want to become a part of Trophy Tuesday, it's super easy. All you have to do is just send us a message with your trophy and check it out every Tuesday on SCHEELS Outdoors. One season in specific that's really ramping up is waterfowl hunting. Now, waterfowl hunting is a blast. It's super easy to get into. You can get into it without a ton of equipment, or you can get really crazy about it. We expect to see a lot of newcomers to the sport, so we thought it would be awesome to sit down with one of our experts from the Eden Prairie store, Matt Rustad. Here's our conversation with Matt about all things waterfowl. Today, we are talking everything waterfowl, and we have a bit of a celebrity in our midst. We've got Mr. Matt Rustad from the Eden Prairie store. So you may have seen him on a commercial if you're watching football and you see the SCHEELS Waterfowl commercial. Matt is on there. So, hey, how are you doing today, Matt?
Doing good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. So, yeah. So when we're filming this, season's just about to start. Are you jacked or what?
Oh yeah, it's been really good already. So I think it's just going to keep rolling from there. That's for sure.
Perfect. So how did you first get started into waterfowl? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, hunting's been something that my family's done forever. As little as I can remember, I mean, my dad going out hunting, that kind of deal. Really got into it for whatever reason, like out of all the hunting I could do. Grew up deer hunting a little bit, but waterfowl just really stuck to me. Started out sneaking a creek. I remember the first time with my dad. We ended up shooting some honkers that were actually sitting down in there. I just remember that like just stuck in my head forever. And ever since then, I didn't go super hard right away, but it just kind of grew from there and kept going and going and going. So.
And now it's turned into being on a waterfowl commercial. So tell us a little bit about that experience. What was it like?
No, for sure. So yeah, no, I think we shot one goose. I want to say we snuck down there. There was like 50 of them sitting there. I didn't even have a gun. I just remember like being huddled next to my dad, and like they all got up and like one swam down the river. My dad water swatted it, I think. But I just thought it was the coolest thing, man. I've just been obsessed with it. So I waited like a year or two after that is when I started going myself. I think we actually set up in that same exact spot in that river, shot some wood ducks one year, maybe the next year when I actually had a gun. But then after that, my dad actually got us on a couple of guided goose hunts with the guy. Actually comes into the store now, which is pretty cool. I get to tell him stuff now. But we went on some guided goose hunts with him, and I learned a lot there. And he was really good at calling, and that kind of stuck in my head right away. He was a contest goose caller, so right away, like it just like I knew I could do it at some point. So started goose hunting with him. The first time I didn't have a gun with me. The next couple times I did, but I just remember we smashed it. One time it was on a pasture pond. up in kind of northern Minnesota. I had to walk decoys out about half a mile to get out there, but it was super cool. From there, it just kind of kept going and going. I actually had a creek in my backyard, and in the wintertime, it loads up with mallards. You've probably seen like viral videos of it up on Facebook before. I literally had decoys out in my yard about every single day. I'd have 50 ducks walking around my yard. I had like a blind under my deck. I used to sit there and call ducks, and it just didn't shoot a lot then, but I've always loved it.
Oh yeah,
I kept going from there. So
yeah, that's a great way to learn. Just if you have ducks in your backyard, like hearing the vocalizations and being able to interact with them too, shotgun in your hand or not. I mean, it's a great learning experience.
Neighbors used to yell and swear at me, but that's okay. So,
yeah,
shut up. But
yeah,
man, I built a blind under my deck so I could sit out there in the wintertime, and eventually they just start landing there. We'd feed them and stuff. But man, I learned a lot from those birds. But
oh yeah, are you one of those guys that practices calling in the vehicle too, and all your passengers get super mad at you?
I try not to as much as I can. The only reason, I do obviously. I get jacked once in a while, like going on a hunt or whatever, but as a contest caller, like sitting on a chair is different than standing up. So you put a little different air pressure into it. Now, like the last couple of years in South Dakota, I've lived in an apartment, so I haven't been able to. So sometimes, like in the middle of winter, that's the best I have. So you got to do it. But.
Oh, funny. So you touched on that you're doing competition calling. Can you let us know how you got started with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Went to Cabela's way back in the day, probably 10 years ago. Met a guy by the name of Mike Anderson. He's a world championship duck caller from Minnesota, the only world champion we have, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember talking to him, and he was like, "Man, you're really good at calling." And I was just getting into hunting. I thought it was like the coolest thing. I didn't even know who he was until he told me he was a world champion. He like showed me a couple of YouTube videos. He sold me a call, and he just told me like, "You should look into it." So I started watching his YouTube videos. I've literally watched the video 2,000 times of him winning worlds. But I just kept practicing, and I used to post on forums and stuff, and then had a guy named Ben Marlowe. He's a contest caller from Minnesota right now. He's been doing it for the last 15 years. He really took me under his wing, and I used to send him sound files all the time. He took the time and kind of molded me and helped me learn how to call. So he did a lot, but it's really fun once you get into it, getting to travel and see guys you know from across the country.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So what are the main differences and similarities between competition calling and then bringing that out into the field?
Yeah. So as far as contest calling goes, there's pretty much 3 different styles of duck calling contests. That's what I do. I'm a duck calling guy. I have done a few goose calling contests, but duck calling is what I like to do. So the main one you really hear about is Main Street duck calling, or open, they would call it. That's what you're going to see at Worlds. And that's basically what that is. It's pushing your duck call to its completely full limit. I mean, it's literally, if you blow one little piece of air different, it's going to squeak your call and you're going to get cut and go home. So it's doesn't really sound a whole lot like ducks. There's a lot of things that you'll see that will kind of go into like meat calling. And then you have meat calling. Meat calling is literally kind of like doing the Main Street sequence, but it's what you actually do out in the field. So it's sounding like ducks. And that's honestly my favorite thing to do. I love doing meat calling contests. They're super fun. It's a little more relaxed. It's not quite as tough, but you just get to sound like a duck, and that's what I like to do. And then the last one, the live duck calling contest. This one, you just want to sound like a couple ducks. It's a 60-second routine. It's a lot shorter. And this one, again, it's just even sounding just more like a duck. So.
Okay, cool. So, let's talk about just calls in general. What are the different types of calls out there, and what are their applications?
Yeah, so right now, kind of what's storming the market, you're going to have your acrylic, which is your industry standard for a high-end, say, duck call or a goose call. And that's what most guys are going to be after. It's nice and pretty most of the time. You're kind of looking at $130, $150 price range for a duck call. As far as any other options go, what's kind of storming the market right now is Delrin. Delrin's a material. It's made the exact same way as an acrylic duck call on a CNC machine. And it's going to run you about half the price, which is pretty cool. I know here in Eden Prairie, we've been pushing really hard. I know in Sioux Falls we did. Man, it's you're looking on like a duck call about $60 as opposed to $130, and it's going to really do about the exact same thing. That material is actually more durable. The acrylic's just going to be a little crisper sounding, and but for the price difference, someone getting into it, that Gowron's a really good option to go. Even hunting in the field, younger guys where they're going to beat up stuff, lose stuff, I'd be a lot happier to lose a $60 duck call than a $130 duck call.
Yeah, you've never lost anything in a duck blind, have
No,
you?
never.
No, that
never
never happens. For sure. So there's a lot of different vocalizations a duck has. Can you walk us through all of those, all the important noises that you need to make?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, kind of right off the bat, you hear guys, they're going to, obviously everyone kind of knows what the quack is. That's just a duck kind of talking to one another, doing whatever. On top of that, you also have different kinds of feed calls. One of the first ones you hear just be like your regular feed. That's going to be like a duck just sitting there eating some corn, or sitting out in the field, sitting in the water. And this is kind of what that sounds like. Just kind of hanging out there, relaxed, eating food. And that's on top of that, you'll have a rolling feed, and that's kind of one you'll hear. I notice it a lot more late in the year. And typically what that means is, look up. And it's typically like migrating mallards, or mallards coming out to feed in a cornfield. See a lot, big cornfield feeds, you'll hear that rolling feed. It sounds a little something like this. This isn't perfect. Not something you necessarily do hunting, but it's a different sound that the ducks make. And then you'll hear them kind of talking in between that. Aside from that, you're going to have a greeting call. That's just ducks saying, hey, I'm over here. They'll do that in the field, water, kind of wherever. This is what that sounds like. Then really the last one would be like a comeback call. That's a duck kind of pleading for another one to come back. You just extend out that greeting call a little bit. That's kind of the different variations that a duck makes. It's really those four things. You just kind of blend everything together and make it sound good. It's about what you do.
Okay, so I'm personally a bow hunter, so I've done a little bit of waterfowl, and but I don't have all the gear and stuff like that. So what you did literally just blew my mind, and I have no idea how to do any of that right now. So let's take a step back, and I'm going to give you situations, and then I'd like you to teach me a little bit on how to do that call. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right. I just got set up in the blind, and we see our first flock of geese or of ducks on the horizon. Like, what are you shooting at them right away?
Right away, I'm going to let them come to me and see what they're going to do. Probably what I would do first, if I was hunting, say we're hunting a cornfield, that would probably be the easiest way to, or really a lake for whatever, it doesn't matter. The first thing I would do is kind of start with something a little more relaxed, if I know they're coming to me. If I'm hunting a field, I know they're going to, or if I'm hunting a pond that I know they're going to come and hang out there. If they're coming to me, I'm just going to keep really chill. I'm going to hit them with a feed call, probably going to cut feed, just something just really kind of quiet, just to kind of keep their attention and their eyes locked on me. And then what I'm going to do calling is going to depict on what the birds are doing. If they start to turn a little bit, or they're circling kind of weird, and I want to get them to drop right in, that's where I'll do the other ones. So I'd start typically right away with some sort of feed. Then if I notice they start to drift off, that's what I just watch the main duck, or I pick one and watch. If it starts to drift off, then I'll hit it with kind of like that greeting call to catch their eye, get them coming a little better. Then I'll get them coming my way, probably switch back to some sort of feeder call or go quiet, just kind of let them come to me. If they start coming, make a big circle. Probably the last thing I'll do to kill them a lot of the times, it's one of my favorite little secrets. When they're on that last swing, you know they're going to come in. I'll do that greeting call, but I'll just keep like quacking afterwards. If they're like right about to come in, what that does in my experience, I get them to cup, I get them locked in on me, and they're coming to my sound. As a hunter, I love calling. That's what I do. I use my calling abilities to me, and I let them come to my sound a lot of times. So typically I'm hunting a little more decoys, whatnot, but I mean, that's they're going to turn. I do that, and I want them just coming right to me. I want to shoot them right in the face. I don't want them to stand off or just a spread, basically.
Yep. So when do you know to call versus when not to call?
It's a tough question. I mean, I just like calling. I think a lot of guys go and duck hunting. They want to. I honestly will probably start off with every time. If they want nothing to do with it, you'll see it like goose hunting. I'll be like, all right, let's just not say a word and see what they do. That would be the biggest thing. Otherwise, it's more of a feel. I like just like watch those birds drift off. I don't necessarily think there's a time like you don't like where duck calling just doesn't work. Just maybe not doing it in the right way, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But it's really just learning to read those birds and what they're doing and get them to react. That's what I like to say.
Okay. So, I mean, there's a concept calling on the turn. Like, what can you walk me through that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's about exactly what I mean. Just get them to react and get them to switch, and that's when you beat them. And you get them beat, and they're going to come in.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about like your hunting setups now and what you do to prepare for the hunt. So somebody that's just starting to get into duck hunting or goose hunting, where do you start?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, duck hunting is really easy. That's what's cool about it. And that's why I think why it's so popular going out in duck opener. I mean, you can pick a lot of sloughs and put a dozen decoys, 2 dozen decoys out, and maybe no decoys out, and you can have really good success. So I'll probably focus a little more on the goose side of things. For someone just getting into the sport, honestly, the best thing they could absolutely do right away without having to spend a lot of money is invest in a silhouette spread. It's been crazy right now. I know every single store we're selling a ton of them. You're seeing guys kill geese over silhouettes everywhere, and for a couple $100, you can get a really good spread of goose decoys instead of having to spend $2,000 for a spread of goose decoys. So a layout blind, hunting geese in the field, you kind of need a layout blind, but other than that, a goose call and the silhouettes are such a useful tool that it's getting tapped into right now. Everyone's using them, and there's a reason that they work.
Mm-hmm. So how do you position those? Do you like have them go at different angles so like the different birds will see them in different positions?
And I've noticed a lot of guys do it differently. For sure, I kind of angle them at different directions, but at the same time, I still want to show like groups and movement among the decoys. So like if I have like a pot of decoys out here and a pot of decoys here, I kind of like I'll have them face different directions, but they're going like the same place just to show that there's kind of movement and spread as a flock of geese is working. And there's times where I'll have them faced all over, but I like to have them like kind of grouped up yet. Otherwise, if everyone's just facing different directions, I mean, it would work. That's kind of how I go about it for the most part. It is big though to have them face different directions. If you have them all looking one way, at some point they're going to come invisible in your spread, and that's what makes it tough. And I realize there's some limits as far as silhouettes goes, but the advantages of them, not having to pack anything in really. You don't need a trailer. You can throw them right in the bed of your truck. You can put them out in a minute. You can put 50 out in 2 minutes. You know what I mean? It's just, they're super slick. But make sure you face in different direction. What I kind of do is I'll walk a couple feet apart. I don't run too close usually. And I'll maybe like have them all, like maybe not all, but a flock looking the same way. But in that same sense, I'm going to have them staggered, like different directions. So that goose that flies by doesn't lose sight of the whole flock.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So how do you choose a field?
Yeah. I mean, it's scouting. That's the number one thing. And a lot of times, I mean, in Minnesota, you'll see, now that I'm back here, you get a lot more molt migrators. It's a big thing that sweeps waterfowl hunters across Minnesota. That's going to be your 1 to 2 year old non-breeding birds that follow the food line, kind of up from the south and then back from Canada. And those ones are really fun to hunt. So those, you don't necessarily have to be in like an X field that geese are in. Those ones, I mean, you can just be in a really visible spot. I mean, I got buddies that kill in backyards. I got anywhere green, yellow, somewhere your decoys pop out really good. The biggest way to kill geese would be, it's going scouting and obviously seeing them in the field, making sure they're coming from a ways away. The roost isn't too close, so every time you shoot, they don't hear you on the roost too close to scare them. That's a big one out in South Dakota. A lot of the spots, the geese there's ponds all over. In North Dakota would be the same thing. A lot of times they'll roost close, so you got to kind of play the wind and get the right wind so you're not busting the roost out. And otherwise, the last thing would be traffic. You can hunt a field with good traffic. Maybe there's an X field that geese are sitting in, you can't get permission on it. You're going to set up in the field, the green field, the really visible field in between the roost in that field, just trying to pull them off with as many decoys as you can get out. So that would be the first thing. I'm always looking for an X field. If you're in an X field, you're going to kill geese usually. You really have to mess it up not to kill them. And that just takes time to find, obviously, where roosts are and stuff like that. But if you can't get in that X, it doesn't mean to give up. Look around it and see what you could do to get underneath those birds.
So for people that don't know what an X field is, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
For sure, yeah. That would just be an X field would be a field that geese are feeding. That's where they're all going. And that would be, you scout it 3 days in a row, and 3 days straight they're going out to that field. That's where you want to be. Those geese are out there eating. They're hanging out, or maybe they're going to a loaf out there. That's just what we call an X typically. Somewhere the geese are just actually going to specifically.
And so when you're going to set up on that field, you've seen them there a few different days. Do you set up like literally in the exact spot they drop, or do you get a little bit forward, like closer to where they're coming from? What do you do there?
There's a couple things that play into that. The one would be the hide. That would be my first question. If it's a really good hide, if that means if I'm going to be able to brush my blinds in really good or my A-frame, I will go sit exactly where they're at. Watching them, you'll kind of see how they work. The second thing that I always look for when I'm hunting an X field is the first thing is going to be the hide. The second thing is going to be the wind. The wind direction is going to tell me a lot. It's going to tell me where the birds are going to finish at and if they're going to see my hide. So a lot of the times, maybe it's like a silage field, for example. There's not a whole lot of stuff that's out in the field. This time of year, a lot of guys hunt silage. There's not a whole lot of stubble laying around the field. So if I lay out blinds right in the middle of it, all stubbled up with corn, it might work for some birds. If it's really windy out, the birds might come low, and they might not notice, and might not care, whatever. If it's not very windy out, they're probably going to fly to me, circle around me a bunch of times, and not come in, or give me a crack shot at 30 yards circling. So playing the wind is really important to me. Sometimes I will set up right where they're at, but if it's not a good hide, it's not worth it. I would pull off a little bit, maybe 100 yards away. There's a spot in the field that had a little better hide, and I'll go over to that and maybe have my layout blinds totally brushed in if there's not a lot of wind, and I'll actually kill the birds a little better. You might lose a flock to exactly where they were going, but the ones you get are going to finish a lot better. So those are the biggest two things. Wind is a huge factor waterfowl hunting every day, no matter what you're doing.
I suppose because, super windy days, they're not going to hear you from a long ways away, or, if they're downwind, then they will be able to hear you from quite a bit. Landing strategies.
Exactly. Yep.
Makes a lot of sense. So are there any new products out there that have been like game changers for you?
Yeah, without a doubt. Big Owls and the A-frames, whether it be our SCHEELS ones. I kind of hit on the Big Owls a little bit earlier. I just can't get over how many people are using them. They still work. You'd think like when every single person's hunting over 5 to 10 dozen silhouettes, like they wouldn't work, but everyone keeps killing them over them. They just are so awesome. Throw them in the bed of your truck. I have buddies, big trailers, whatnot, and more often than not, you're seeing them go out with 10 dozen silhouettes in the bed of their truck now. It's just kind of changed the game of hunting, of hunting honkers right now. On top of that, you're seeing everyone use A-frames. A-frames are awesome. Like I was saying before, my example about the silage field hide. In silage fields, it seems A-frames have done really good. It's almost the opposite effect, There's nothing in the field, so laying like a bunch of corn stubble in the middle of a brown field doesn't look the best. But if you go up with it, you just look like a natural swat, or maybe a roll that they missed out in the corn, or maybe a patch of grass that happened to go out in the field. So a lot of guys have been going that way. You can sit comfortably, get 3 guys in there, 4 guys, you let yourself in.
Yeah, and that's a great way to get the kids involved too, or people that haven't been before.
Yeah, dogs. I mean, it's a little tougher for dogs sometimes. It's nice if it's a younger dog, maybe like a puppy, that kind of thing, then you can just keep them right in there or work with them. They're not going to really break, so they're not going to see what's going on. You can go out there and work with them a little better. But they're super handy tool. I use them every day. I mean, every time I hunt, honestly, it's getting to the point of either an A-frame or using silhouettes.
Nice. So, being a waterfowl expert at the Eden Prairie store, what are some really commonly asked questions you get?
Ooh, do silhouettes work? One, that's like, honestly, like right now, it's just a craze, and they do, without a doubt. It's such a reverse of your thought process of what, I mean, for a while you had to use a full body goose or you weren't going to kill a goose, So everyone back 15, 20 years ago, they were using silhouettes and they were killing geese over them. Then it went to full bodies and now it's back to silhouettes. So people are kind of confused about that. Another really popular question this year is the same exact thing. Like, guys, do A-frames work? There's no way they don't see you up in that. And then every time I just smile and tell them to go take it out. And they come back and they're like, I can't believe that worked. It's literally clockwork every time. I can't believe that worked like that. Yeah, it really does work. So.
That's awesome. So it started at silhouettes and then it kind of moved into the full body flocked and now it's back to silhouettes. Do you anticipate the geese kind of catching on to that and having to move back?
I have a little, I don't know. It probably depends who you ask. In my opinion, I think if you look like a goose, sound like a goose, or in the right spot, a goose is going to come in. Silhouettes have always worked. Guys, when people were using full bodies, they honestly, in my opinion, are probably a little more effective than a silhouette. They just have disadvantages that I don't like. Being bulky, tough to put out. I could see them going that way, after a while. If I just have a tough time, if you look like a goose, geese are going to come in. So,
Nice. So, what sort of gear or system do you wear into the field, or what you recommend?
Yeah, so far I've been rocking Sitka now the last 3-4 years pretty hard. It's awesome stuff. It's tough to beat from earlier in the year. They're awesome base layers and stuff they have. They're kind of lighter weight. Quarter zips and pants. We're in early season goose hunting all the way even until late in the year. I use my Sitka every day. I have it in my truck with me. I wear it to work. I think you see a lot of guys that end up doing that, man. It's pretty tough stuff to beat.
A lot of waterfowl guys, not really any deer guys. It's a nice thing about waterfowl. You really don't have to worry about scent.
Yeah. No, it's exactly. It's definitely the thing to have, Sitka, and it's proved itself. There's nothing right now in the waterfowl industry that can compete. That's just what it comes down to. Being dry and warm, it's what you want. Duck hunting, you want to be warm and dry. So they got it down.
Absolutely. No, they do make some incredible gear. But so how about that person that's just looking into waterfowl hunting, is on a budget and looks at the price tag and is like, well, I can't do that, but I want to hunt. So what would you recommend there?
I've been pretty happy with some of the game hide stuff. I think they make a good product for, kind of entry-level guys getting into it. You can get a jacket that has like a removable liner, going to keep you could wear it opener, as a waterproof kind of shell. You could also wear it later in the year, throw that liner in there, which is kind of nice. But I've had plenty of guys go it that way, and even buddies, that kind of thing. I've had some game hide back in the day. I mean, it gets you out there, and it's gonna keep you warm.
Let's talk a little bit about layering. So, what is your layering setup, and what are must-haves?
Yeah, I always rock base layers. On top of that, like an earlier season one is important to have early in the year, so you're not sweating too bad. And then on top of that, as far as if I'm going, I guess most of the year, if I'm going field hunting, I'm gonna rock my gradient pants. They're pretty tough to beat. Wearing them into the gas station in the morning is pretty nice, and then throwing my Hudson bibs over the top of that. Then with that, typically I rock a duck oven. I'm a sweatshirt guy. You'll probably see like a lot of pictures of me. I'm wearing like sweatpants and sweatshirts. I'm just kind of a dork like that. But that, to me, that duck oven just feels like I have another sweatshirt on. So that's what I really like about it. Like I said, tee on underneath or whatever. But for most of the year, that's what I'm going to use. Once it gets later, I'll throw on something heavier on top of it. If it's raining out, throw like a Delta wading jacket over the top. That's kind of new I've been going to this year. But yeah.
Okay, great information. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and give you just a couple of random questions. So, if you could give a young hunter one piece of advice, what would it be?
I'd give them two. One, I would say go have fun. Obviously, that's what the whole thing's about. I've learned more and more the last couple of years. I just want to get out with my buddies and just go have a good time. But on top of that, what's going to help you have a little more good time is scouting. It's such a huge piece of hunting, and just getting out and just learning what the birds are doing in your area. You're going to be mind blown at how much stuff you'll learn in one night of scouting in your area, and that's going to make your hunt that much better. Even if you're hunting a public lake, if you go out scouting the morning before, you might have an idea where the goose feeds. If there's a goose feed maybe near the lake, and they're going to come to loaf there in the day, or anything like that. Just getting out and scouting, and just scouting as much as you possibly can, and it's just going to lead to good memories out in the field.
Nice. If you could only hunt one, ducks or geese, which one are you doing?
I'm taking honkers any day. The reason being, I love duck. It's tough. I would take honkers. The reason being, they're so vocal, and I love calling. I love calling ducks too, and they can be pretty vocal. Like later in the year, you'll see a little more, but to me, honkers are kind of king as far as calling and having them call back, and watching them decoy. It gets your heart pumping about every time, no matter where you're at. Big honkers. That's why I like to decoy. If I had one choice.
Nice. What is the craziest thing that's ever happened to you in a blind?
Craziest thing that's ever happened to me in a blind. Let's see. Shot a duck band on a boat launch once. That was pretty cool.
Nice.
I was out scouting, and I wouldn't not necessarily a blind. We were set up, but we went out scouting, and there was like 1,500 ducks sitting on a boat launch in South Dakota. So we kicked them out, and it was like the second to last day of the season. Like, screw it, let's just sit up here. It was like that. It was like 9 o'clock in the morning, whatever. And kicked them out, and we thought they'd come back. Well, a couple came back, but had a flock of like 1,000 working us over the top. Like they were really pretty much going past us, and like one single duck broke off. And I was just laying there calling and calling and calling. He was just right past a boat launch of a lake, and came right in. It was the only banded duck I shot, which is pretty cool from Kentucky. So that's kind of a funny story. Yeah.
Nice. Have you ever come close or been hit by a goose that you shot and is falling out of the sky?
Oh, man. Yes, I have. Many times. I wish I had a video. I had one where it just came and crashed right in our A-frame at one time. That was pretty scary. It didn't hit me, though, thankfully. So, been hit by pigeons a few times, but geese, I have not been clipped so far.
What are your tips for early season calling versus mid-season versus late season calling?
Yeah, so as far as ducks go, early season duck hunting, I'm not making a whole lot of noise typically, unless it's like a really juice feed or like some pond you're hunting that's loaded. I'm pretty quiet. A lot of times this time of year, I mean, you're hunting in the morning and it's foggy out, or it's warm out. They're really kind of like lethargic in a way. I'll call a little bit, and I'm just going to hit them kind of at those points just to turn them. That's when I'm going to call. Later in the year, I'll get a little more aggressive. If I'm hunting field especially, a lot of feed calling, like stuff like that. I'll feed call a lot in fields. That's big for me. Typically late in the year as well, transition a little more aggressive, try to pull singles and doubles out of flocks, that kind of thing, or even the whole flock. Get a little more aggressive later in the year. And then if it's windy out, they just can't hear very good. So you can catch their attention a little better if it's windy. I'll get a little louder. As far as geese go, it's kind of the same thing. How I like to hunt, I hunt with a lot of decoys usually. So I use my calling to kind of my advantage. That's why I hunt with more decoys, because I can sound like a few more geese or a few more ducks out there. Mm-hmm. And I set up my spread so like they come in that way. They come to my sound. Whenever I'm hunting, I'm having the geese come to my sound at the end. So that's kind of my goal. So I'm always calling a little more than probably the next guy would. Is there times I might call too much? Maybe a little bit, but it's for the most part, it works pretty good. But yeah, later in the year, bigger spreads usually. Those molt migrator days where the geese are just flying way up high in the air, just want to catch your attention, rip on them all day. Hunting traffic, the geese aren't in your field, you might as well call till you can't breathe anymore because you just want to get their attention.
Do you notice that waterfowl ever get call shy as it gets later into the season?
Around here, a lot more so. I've been kind of blessed out in South Dakota the last 5 years. I think here for sure, they get a little call shy, but I kind of believe that same principle. If you sound like a goose, if you look like a goose, sound like a goose, they're gonna come in. If you look like a duck, sound like a duck sitting there, they can't. If it's a duck, they think it's a duck, Mm-hmm. So I just try to replicate kind of what they do and get them that way.
Perfect. All right. What are some of the most commonly asked questions that you get at the store?
For sure, one of the most popular asked questions I get for me in the store, and I get told daily, if not multiple times a day from all my buddies here, is what calls do you use on your lanyard? And for me, my go-to that I use is C&S Custom Calls. They're made right in Zumbrota, Minnesota. As far as like customer service goes, they're pretty tough to beat. They make some awesome calls too. I use them in all my meat calling contests. My go-to duck call for my lanyard is the Archangel. I use it in all my meat calling contests. It's gotten me 4th place in the world 2-man duck. I've won quite a few meat calling contests on it. It's a pretty tough one to beat. What I like about it is I can use it for about anything. It's loud. It's got a little bit of rasp to it, but it's also not too overbearing. And here's kind of a little sound file of the Archangel. Overall, to me, it fits me perfect. It's that Archangel is. I'm confident about giving that call to anyone. It's a great duck call. The other one I paired up with here is the Rise on my lanyard. I like the Rise because it's totally different than the Archangel. It takes a little while to get used to, and it's actually more of like a timber style call. It's really quiet. So I use that, finishing birds, that kind of deal. You can see it's got the tuning hole there. That's nothing really new. That's been around for a while, but what's cool about it is just lifting my finger, I can sound like a different duck. So, again, this would be a little quieter, but you'll see what I mean here. How I'll typically hunt with it. That's kind of my go-to when I like to finish them, or when maybe it's a not windy day. It's really calm out, just not quite as loud. C&S, they make quite a few different calls. They have, for the most part, they're going to be all single reads.
Do you use a single read or a double read call? Can you explain the differences, or if maybe one of them is a good starter and you transition into something else?
Yeah, honestly, as far as what I really believe in for the most part, I think C&S does too. Most of their calls are going to be a single read call, and the advantage of that is that it's going to help you build the right air presentation in the call right away, and that's huge for me. You can kill a duck on any single duck call, but if you really want to get better at it and you want to be able to work a flock of ducks the right way, or take control of the ducks, put them on a leash and have them come to you and be able to work them a little better, that single read is awesome because it's going to build you the right pressure right away. You're going to get louder with it. You're going to be able to push the call to its full potential. You're not going to limit yourself. Sometimes double reads acts kind of like a clutch right away, and it helps you out, but it also hinders you kind of in the end as far as your calling abilities go. Right away, the big thing with a double read, just that extra read on there just kind of makes it sound a little more raspy, or maybe a little, in my opinion, I think it sounds a little flatter, but it's more of a clutch. And that single read, you can do everything you can do on a single read call, and you can a double read call, but it's just going to make you that much better a caller.
Perfect. Great explanation. What is your favorite snack in the blind?
Ooh, for sure. It's Mountain Dew, and then my buddy, he always makes me jerky. I get a couple. All my buddies know I'm like a jerky thief. I don't make a lot of jerky myself, but like any of my buddies know if they make bring goose jerky or turkey jerky or whatever, deer jerky, I'm eating the whole bag no matter what. So I'm like a straight Mountain Dew and straight whoever. I steal a snack stealer. Honestly, I am kind of.
Okay, perfect.
I bring a Mountain Dew, but I forget the snacks. So usually if it's jerky, it's all mine. I just take it.
All right, so I bring the jerky and then you do the call-in, right? That sounds like an excellent combo.
Most guys can deal with that.
What is your all-time favorite hunting memory?
There's so many hunting memories. I really just can't even. It's tough to pick one. For whatever reason, when I think of going like duck or goose hunting the last 5 years, I mean, I've been in South Dakota. It's one of the best places in the world to be hunting wise. I think of one where me and a buddy drove out west. We drove 4 hours, skipped class. It was late in the year. We drove to like 5 inches of snow, about gotten like 4 accidents. Interstates were closed. They were going to close them. They didn't close yet. We made it out there, got set up, and we just absolutely annihilated the honkers. I mean, we had thousands landing. Every single flock was just coming in perfect, like 5 inches of fresh snow. And it was just pretty tough to beat. We shot a Quill Lake goose that day, picked it out of a flock. It was just fun. We had a couple left. We were just kind of letting flocks work, looking for cool stuff. We were getting them so bad. It was a really fun day. That one, for whatever reason, just how perfect it was the day, and we just absolutely smashed them. Just me and a buddy. A lot of times, me just hunting with 1 or 2 guys is what I like to do as far as duck and goose hunting goes.
Mm-hmm. When do you know when it's time to pick up and move on if you haven't filled up? On that off chance that you don't smash them.
That happens a lot. Honestly, it's you never know. Every time you do go, then the flock of geese flies. It's one of those things, every time you go to take a pee, the flock of geese comes into your spread, or a duck comes into your spread. I don't know what the answer is. Literally, I don't think anybody does. No matter what, you can sit there till 1 o'clock in the afternoon in the field, and as soon as you pull the truck out in the decoys, a flock of geese comes. But I don't know. It's give her 10 more minutes kind of thing. I don't really have the answer.
Mm-hmm. The answer is always 10 more minutes.
If someone does know the answer, let me know. I would love to know exactly what the motto is there.
Oh, perfect. So, well, tons of great information. I've learned a lot on this, and I'm excited to kind of follow you along, see how your season goes. And, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to SCHEELS Outdoors social media, head to one of your local stores, talk with an expert like Matt. So, hey, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. It was
absolutely.
Good.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, you go crush some ducks and geese.
Will do.
All right. Take it easy, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. You just heard from SCHEELS waterfowl expert Matt Rustad of the Eden Prairie store, sharing a ton of great information about waterfowl that he's learned throughout the years. Man, I wish I could blow a call like that. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out in the comments below or visit us at SCHEELS Outdoors, Facebook and Instagram, or also stop in store and talk to any of our waterfowl experts. Another great source of information is going to be happening October 6th at 7 p.m., where we're going to have our next segment of the virtual hunt series. We'll be sitting down with Fred Zink and talking all things a waterfowl. If you missed that segment, we're going to be having it right here on the SCHEELS Outdoors podcast. With that, I want to thank you all for listening, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the SCHEELS Outdoors Podcast. Stay tuned for future segments and visit our social media pages, SCHEELS Outdoors on Facebook and Instagram for daily updates.